DATV, and the Greater Dayton Area League of Women Voters present Meet the Candidates.
Hello, I am Beth Schaefer, member of the League of Women Voters of the Greater Dayton area. I am here today with candidates running in the Democratic primary for state representative of the 38th District. There are two candidates, Derek L. Forward and Desiree Timms. We will start our interviews by giving the candidates 1 minute to tell us about themselves and why they want to serve as state representative of the 38th District.
Hello, my name is Dr. Derek L. Forward. I am a candidate for the 38th House District of Ohio. I am a native Daytonian. I actually grew up in Jefferson Township, and from Jefferson Township, went on to have a career at Speedway for the next almost 30 years in several different leadership roles, having an opportunity to hire, train, and develop individuals, watch their careers matriculate through the organization, and also had an opportunity to develop a relationship between Central State, Wilberforce University, and Speedway to give opportunities for job opportunities. And then, of course, served as the NAACP president here locally for the past 18 years, advocating for human rights, women's rights, voting rights, economic sustainability, education, healthcare, and the list goes on. I've been a person that has been out here doing great work, and I've demonstrated that work for 18 plus years from an advocacy standpoint, 30 years from a professional standpoint.
Now we will hear from Desiree Timms.
Hi, I'm Desiree Timms. I am a candidate for state representative. I'm a native Daytonian. I often refer to myself as a daughter of Dayton. I am so blessed and privileged to have the support of so many leaders in the community who have invested in me over time that allowed me to graduate from Dunbar, attend Xavier, go to law school at Georgetown Law, work in the White House for President Obama, and on Capitol Hill for Sherrod Brown. I'm presently president and CEO of Innovation Ohio, where I lead a progressive policy think tank where we focus on policies that will help make lives better for Ohioans. I hope that you'll consider voting for me in the upcoming primary because I am fighting for you. I want to make sure we strengthen our public education system. I want to make sure we create job opportunities, jobs that pay the bills and jobs of the future, and make sure that everyone has access to basic human rights, including abortion care and health care. Thank you.
Thank you both. Now I'm going to ask each candidate the same questions. We will have 2 minutes to speak to each question, and then I will move on to the next candidate and give them 2 minutes to respond. So let's start with Desiree, and the first question is, what are your priorities for District 38?
My priorities for District 38 include housing, education, and economic opportunity. I'm focused on housing because we have too many out-of-state landlords holding property, raising rents, and not updating the homes that are on the market. We don't have enough apartments available for so many people who want to live and expand their families in our community. And so housing will remain a key priority for me. The second is education. We know that school funding is not fair. We don't have a number of resources available to public school students. I'm a graduate of Dayton Public Schools. My personal story, when I was in the 9th grade, my teacher told me that I had the same history textbook as his daughter in the 4th grade who was attending Kettering schools. So we know that there is a disparate amount of resources going to inner city schools versus suburban schools because of the school funding formula that doesn't work. No child, regardless of where you live, should have a different education outcome simply based on zip code. And lastly, we need jobs that pay the bill, jobs of the future. Technology is here. AI is here. We need to make sure that our people are trained and skilled to take on these new jobs. And so I'm excited about what's to come in our community, and that includes the Amtrak. We know that the Amtrak line is coming and it's going to include Dayton. And we have to make sure that our people, our community, our neighbors are prepared to take the jobs, to rebuild the tracks, to drive the trains, and to build and rebuild our community around public transportation. It is going to be a huge asset, not just for our community, but for the entire state of Ohio. And so I hope that you'll consider voting Desiree Timms, because I am going to champion these issues for you.
Thank you. Derek, what are your priorities for District 38?
Yes, my priorities, number one, let me tell you my 3L platform of success. Number one, I want to be able to listen to the constituents of this community, of the House District 38. I know many of those issues, but I want to be able to listen at what their desires are. This district encompasses Trotwood, Ohio, all of Trotwood, Ohio, in fact, Dayton, Ohio, as well as a part of Jefferson Township where I grew up at, and Dayton where I live at, and Trotwood where I spent a lot of time at growing up as a youth. So as I think about the priorities and economic sustainability, I have been on the front lines of economic sustainability inside this community for 2 decades. I have been here championing the cause of economic rights for all persons. So for me, looking at the economic base and looking at the rail system that is going to be coming, it's going to be a big driver for economic dollars. And that will give us an opportunity to have a more robust and build our median income, because that's one thing when you talk about economics. A lot of times investors say they will not invest because of your median income. Quite frankly, I think if you have some people from a negotiation standpoint that look at economics and looked at the possibilities that are out there and champion the cause and say, we are not fearful of median income, but you got to be able to drive jobs to do that. How else are you going to do that? Through education. You got to have your children on the battle line for a good educational opportunity and outcome. We have some great institutions here. If you want to go to a HBCU, you got Central State and Wilberforce University. If you want to go to PWI, you have University of Dayton, St. Clair, Wright State University, University of Dayton. So we have a lot of capital here as it relates to schooling and educational opportunities. Education opens doors to unlimited possibilities, and our youth deserve the best. Lastly, when I look at jobs and opportunities and union rights and women's rights, those are things I want to champion.
Thank you very much. As our understanding, we want to make sure that everybody has an opportunity to answer questions first or last. So actually, Derek, I'm going to ask you the next question. What skill set do you possess that will enable you to move your priorities or legislation forward?
My skill set is, number one, I have the ability to bring people together. I've demonstrated that over 20 years I've been inside this community. When I think about what happened to George Floyd, that awful day of George Floyd, and I was able to bring together 30 law enforcement officers, different beliefs, different backgrounds, but I was able to bring those 30 different law enforcement officers, institutions together to come up with an 8-point strategy on criminal justice reform and police accountability inside of the Dayton region. And that is because people have an opportunity to work together. Whether not you're a D or an R or an I, black, white, Hispanic, it doesn't matter. How can we work together to come out and get a desired outcome? When it comes to pivotal issues inside of this community, that's something that we have to be able to engage each other on. When we talk about negotiation skills, when I had an opportunity to be employed at Speedway for nearly 3 decades, almost 30 years, I almost made it 30 years, but I retired back on October 15th, 2021. And that opportunity that I had to be able to negotiate a lot of different contracts with them for a number of years, that skill set is something that's needed when you talk about having a bargaining chip and talking about driving economics, talking about driving education, talking about driving healthcare disparities, talking about driving political representation. These are the skill sets that you need. Integrity. People want to know that you have the utmost integrity, and people want to know that you're going to go to bat for them with honesty. These are the traits that I have and I've demonstrated over these past 2 decades. I'm not talking about things that I'm going to do. I'm not talking about things I wish to do. I'm talking about things I've demonstrated for the past 2 decades on the grounds, on the front lines for the citizens of Dayton, Ohio, and throughout the Dayton region. Vote for Derek L. Ford as your next state representative.
Okay, thank you very much. So, Desiree, what skill set do you possess that enable you to move your priorities or legislation forward?
I have more than a decade of experience working with lawmakers on both sides of the aisle. I spent over a decade in and out of the halls of Capitol Hill in the White House working for President Obama and then Vice President Joe Biden. I understand what it takes to get things done. I worked on judicial nominations, which also included making sure Republicans and Democrats from both states, including right here in Ohio, when we had Sherrod Brown and then Senator Rob Portman, come to an agreement on who we are putting forward on the federal bench. When it comes to sitting at the table and understanding how legislation works, you have to have experience and a background writing laws. That is my background. It includes, there is something so simple that can ruin a piece of legislation in terms of its intent, and that's a comma. A comma can tank an entire law. And so we have to make sure that we're sending people into the halls of power with this, having a seat at the table who understand how laws work, how legislation works, beyond negotiation, but truly understanding the impact that it will have on people, on real people, because policy can change lives. I've seen it happen. We've seen it through the Affordable Care Act. We've seen it through Issue 1. I worked on the Issue 1 campaign, traveling all across the state, knocking doors, and led the debate to ensure that women and people who get pregnant have access to birth control, to an abortion. We are still fighting fights of 50 years ago, and we have to make sure we're sending the most qualified and capable person there to do the job. And that's why I believe that the skill sets I have, my education, my experience, will allow me to be extremely effective as the state representative for District 38. And that's why I hope you'll consider voting for Desiree Timms.
Thank you. Again, to kind of switch things around, we're going to ask you, Desiree, the next question, and hope that I give you ample time to answer it. How do you see the legislature's role in determining curriculum and policy for local school districts?
What I think about when I think about the state legislature, when it comes to schools and school districts and the curriculum, I think about the importance of having a representative body. Right now, we have a state legislature that does not reflect the true values of Ohioans. It is extremely gerrymandered, and that's why we're seeing extreme legislation pour out of the State House, so much so that even once it reaches the governor's desk, if he vetoes it or not, they simply overwrite it. We've seen extreme legislation come out of the State House, including the will to inspect children's genitals because of one extreme party's obsession with transgender children. We have to make sure that when we send people to the State House and they're sitting at the table, they are working on policies that better our children. So when we think about the curriculum, we're looking at what's happening, right? So recently, the governor announced that he was going to strip away power from the people to house education under the governor's powers, and that's not right. We have to make sure that people from the bottom up, from the inside out, and from the top down are all working together. So when we're talking about the curriculum, we have to make sure that teachers are at the table. We have to make sure that principals are at the table, that parents are at the table, and so that we can come up with legislation and laws that work for everybody. I think if one body, regardless if it's just, parents or teachers or lawmakers, are operating in silos, the only people affected by that, the only people who suffer are children. And so when I'm elected, God willing, as state representative, what I plan to do is to bring everybody at the table, because I believe that the State House is the people's house, and we have to make sure that everyone is aware of what's happening and how it will best benefit them, their family, and their children. And that's why I hope you'll consider voting for Desiree Timms.
All right, thank you. Derek?
Yes. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, how do you see the legislature's role in determining the curriculum and policy for local school districts?
Well, let me just say this. For the past 20 plus years, I've been going to Capitol Hill every year lobbying members of Congress for 20 years. And then even looking here, right here in our local community where House District 38 resides. Speaking with the local school district, preschool promise, learn to earn, our DPS school. In fact, working with Dayton Public Schools, we had an opportunity to work with them and be a part of their strategic plan from this point forward as it relates to how they're going to teach and train their children to be successful going into higher education. So when I think about the legislation, when I think about going to the State House and looking at legislative body, you need all the way down to the custodian worker. The custodian workers know so much that they understand the whole philosophy. Sometimes these are the people, when I talk about that L and to be able to listen, you have people on the ground listening at things that are happening right inside of the school districts. So you got to have the schools teachers, you got to have the administrators, you got to have the students, you got to have everybody engaged in with the state legislature, testifying every single time and opportunity they may have to ensure that the change in the tide and the course that we need to take this particular state, the state of Ohio, in terms of education. We know that education hasn't been funded equitably. It hasn't been. And you need somebody that people will have a receptive ear to listen to. I know going inside this role that we are going in this role, and from the opportunity inside as a Democrat, as a person that is going into the minority. So you got to be able to have those skills, those soft skills, those tough skills to be able to work with legislators across the aisle and ensure that we're doing everything we can in the best interest of our children.
In closing, we'd like to provide each candidate with a minute for a closing statement. So let's start as we began with Derek. Would you like to make a closing statement?
Once again, you have an opportunity to elect somebody to the 38th House District of Ohio who will listen to your concerns, who will have a receptive ear to understand and do everything that we can to possibly go about business in a way that you want them to do. As a legislative body, for 20 years, I have been on the advocacy role, advocating for healthcare, advocating for women's rights, advocating for voting rights, advocating for economic sustainability, advocating for education. But it's time to turn all that advocacy work into legislation. I want to be able to enact laws, that's meaningful laws, that's going to be in the best interest of the constituents of the 38th House District of Ohio. That's what ultimately I want to be able to do. I want to be able to listen to your concerns. And when you send me to the State House in November, first of all, you're going to send me there on March 19th. Then when you send me to the State House in November through that election process, I want to be able to lead. And when I lead, I want to be able to enact legislation that's going to be in the best interest of every constituent, not only in the 30th House District of Ohio, but in the Buckeye State.
All right, thank you very, very much. Desiree, would you like to make a closing statement?
As a daughter of Dayton, a graduate of Dunbar High School, who struggled and made my way through college at Xavier, knocked doors for Obama up and down Salem and Main Street, and Dunbar and Westwood area to make sure that we elected somebody who I thought would fight for us. That opportunity led me to the White House, where I later worked for President Obama and our very own Senator Sherrod Brown, walking the halls of Congress, fighting for equal pay for equal work, making sure reproductive rights are something of the future, fighting on the Issue 1 campaign just recently in November. As a leader of Innovation Ohio, I've been at the State House, I've testified, I've been on the front lines for my entire career, fighting for policies that work for us, for regular people, just like me and you. When I graduated from law school, I was determined to fight for our community, and that's what I'll continue to do. And I hope you'll vote for Desiree Timms on March 19th for the next state representative for House District 38.
Thank you for your participation today. Good luck in your campaigns. The League of Women Voters encourages all candidates to run an issues-oriented campaign. Our goal is to educate the voting public and strengthen our elective political process. Additional questions will be asked of the candidates on Vote 411, which will be available on our website in mid-February. Please note that the last day to register to vote in the primary election is February 20. Early voting for the upcoming primary election begins February 21st at your Board of Elections, or you can request an absentee ballot. I'd also like to remind everyone that the ID requirements for in-person voting have changed. Whether you vote early or vote on Election Day on March 19th, these are the acceptable forms of ID: an unexpired Ohio driver license, an unexpired Ohio State ID card. This is an ID that can be acquired at the Bureau of Motor Vehicles free of charge. An interim identification form issued by the Bureau of Motor Vehicles, a U.S. passport or passport card, a U.S. military ID, Ohio National Guard ID, or a U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs ID card that includes the voter's name and photograph. Remember, your opinion matters, but it only matters if you vote, and it will help make democracy work. If you have questions, feel free to call our league office at 937-228-4041.